Hey, so listen, we are so just in town. We're starting a semester in tomorrow. Well, today officially, but tomorrow we have our first class. I think it's cool. We have an interesting um, case study for us tomorrow, and right, right, Jeff.
I have no idea what you're doing tomorrow. I forget what we talked about this morning.
All right. Well, there we go. We have an interesting case study for tomorrow. And I think we have a lot of stuff happening this semester. I mean, listen, Donald Trump will be back in office shortly, and so it's going to be an interesting semester for sure. That's one of the benefits of having a president such as Trump, as opposed to one who, I don't know, I didn't see much out of the other one, but he wasn't nearly as provocative. Let's just say that our current person in charge. So there's a lot less to push off of if you're wanting to push off of things. So there will be no shortage of interesting topics. And in fact, we have a number of them. We're setting one up where we're going to talk about DEI in the military. We have quite a number of military people who have contacted us about various issues and wanting to come on and be part of it. So that'll be, I think, a really interesting conversation. And Jeff, anything else?
I actually was going through old classes over break, and some of the first ever live streams we had were right before and then right after Trump took office the first time. And that reminded me of the fact that the two of us sat in your office, your old office, and watched on TV on my phone the inauguration. And I was thinking, God, I got to come back up here for the 20th so we can see it all again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy watching the lectures from before his first term, preparing ourselves, preparing the class, preparing everything from the stuff he said prior during his first presidential run, and then how similar some of those same thoughts and fears are happening now.
Yeah.
Before his second term. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. God, there's so much, man. Huh. So much happening, and so much really kind of very destructive things. But we did hear from a friend last night. Lori got a cryptic message from a friend of ours who is in the know on these matters, who said that the hostage release and the peace process in Israel and Gaza was a definitive thing, was there. So then today it's coming out. Hamas announced today that it looks like that they're very, very close to signing off on a deal. So that's a pretty big thing. So
call back to Reagan, 1980 Iran hostage crisis, or 82.
Yeah. No. Oh, the hostage. Yeah. No. 19,
when he was coming into office after Carter.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, "What are you going to do with the hostages?" Within like his first day or two, freaking have the hostages come back.
Anyway, listen, we're here. This isn't a full-fledged office hours, really. We're just trying to figure out a few different things that we can, like where I would set up. All right, so that looks good. Just where we set up and how we do things. Anyway, any ideas, by the way, for class? We received a number of emails about people with some ideas. Somebody emailed me the other day wanting to do something else about woke identities with students. Has a couple students who are in college, one that just graduated, another one that's there, their children are not they don't consider themselves to be as quote woke as lots of other folks do, but are nonetheless, socially progressive, and just thought it would be really interesting to return to revisit that. We did a class a couple of years ago on it, but to revisit it and see what students are saying and how they're thinking about it, especially now in the wake of a second Trump presidency. So we definitely will do that, and it'd be really good if we got some ideas. So if you are watching or going to see this at all, if you have any thoughts about something you'd like to see us talk about, that would be really nice to have. So, because it's hard to come up with things. I have one idea that I came up with yesterday, and which is, Jeff, I haven't told you this, but to talk about students and affinity groups. And I was, driving onto campus yesterday afternoon to meet with Jeff and Darnisha and 100 Thomas, and I was passing back by Fraternity Row, we call it, the street with all the fraternities on it. And I started thinking about just various affinity groups, student groups, and how many students join groups that are, specifically designed for their particular interests or their minoritized status of sort, right? And that's not a bad thing, but students from the Indonesian Student Association or the Puerto Rican Student Association or whatever it is, and then sometimes the LGBT Student Association, but various clubs even, but really affinity groups that are much more based on people's identities tied to who they are, not who they want to be. But so anyway, how it is and why it is, like how students are thinking about that, and how and why students feel a connection or a need to, not their entire college career, but to have some connection with other students who have kind of a similar shared identity, and to have them talk a little bit about that, because this is a thing that we're trying to, we have a big movement in the United States to once again, a lot of people want to close down those kinds of opportunities for students. Here on this campus, we have this Multicultural Resource Center, for example, and students go there and they connect with a lot of students from their own, who they identify with, from their own, who share an identity of some sort, whether it's gender, race, ethnicity, culture, nationality, and that center could go away. It's just the funding seems to be getting cut more and more, and it has always been a really vibrant place for students. And it's not the only place where they hang out, but it's a place where they kind of go to make a connection. And I think about, for me, when I was much younger, living in Ecuador, I used to go past the U.S. consul office in the city where I was. It was a very tiny office, but they had the updated newspapers and that sort of thing. And I would walk in and I just felt like I was in a little slice of the United States. And it was, I mostly went there for newspapers. I didn't feel like I really needed to go, but it was nice to just have that feeling once a week or every other week or something. So, anyway, we'll have a conversation about that and what people are thinking about it. Military, DEI in the military, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what's really happening on the ground, not just what politicians and some people say, but really what is going on. Like how do people, so many people in the military, think about these issues? So that'll be a really cool class, and then we'll have conversations with. We'll have a couple of guests in class from the military, but we'll also talk to people during office hours. All right, Jeff, what else?
Trying to see if
just got all he's got all of his goods here, man. We are
One of my goods is not here actually.
yeah, most of your goods are not here.
Our book that we're gonna get ready for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just seeing your satchel guide to Europe, I thought about putting the other book up, but it's not here. So
Yeah, it's a cool book. I got that from my father-in-law. It's about 100 years old. It's a guidebook for Europe. It's pretty cool, actually, to read it. And we're going to do a class on this little book right here. Hang on, let me come back. This here by Walter White. Does that come up backwards on the screen, or can you?
It is backwards. The American Negro and His Problems.
And His Problems. It's from
Walter White.
Yeah, Walter White. He was actually.
You mean like the guy from Breaking Bad?
No, not a different Walter White. This is from 1927. So I got this from a student of mine. He got it from his grandmother, and he gifted it to me right before he died. Actually, the student. And Walter White was the president of the NAACP. This is published by the NAACP. And Walter White is a guy who was about 30 seconds black. That of his 32 great grandparents or great grandparents, or 5 of them were black. But he headed the NAACP, and he was widely accepted as part of the organization. And I mean, he looked like a white guy, but he wrote this analysis, or he spearheaded writing this, but it was really put out by the NAACP, and it's about, what was the situation of Black Americans. So what I'm going to do is find somebody in class who is really interested in these issues about the American Negro and his problems in the 1920s, right, the early part of the 20th century, and would read this, and then we'll have a conversation about it in class, because it's really, really interesting to see and think about how far we've come.
I think someone just mentioned in a comment on some video I saw talking about that book, exactly that book.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool. So stuff like that. We're going to try to be outside the box as much as possible.
Yeah. Eric asked, should he email the subject idea to you? How would you like them to send it to you?
Yeah, send it to me. Yeah, directly. Yeah, I'll put things right into my. Onto my little folder here of ideas. Yeah, it's.
JCat asked, how about a class on how to just chill out? It's going to be a long life if you're just looking for things to be upset about.
Wait, say that again.
How about a class on how to just chill out? It's going to be a long life if you're just looking at things to be upset about.
Yeah, that could be.
I'm not sure if we want to have a class about that, because, I mean, we could have a class on, like, chill out. Like, different cultures have...
Oh, that's actually really interesting. How...
Like, what they do in their free time, how we've changed, like, how we as a society maybe feel as though we're more free now because we work for 8 hours, we come home for 8 hours, we sleep for 8 hours. But how much freer were we really back when we worked for 3 hours a day?
Yeah.
And slept for 12 hours and, worked with our community for the rest of the time. And we would probably sleep. I think a lot of anthropologists now believe that we slept like
a lot.
Not just a lot, but a lot throughout the day in different like groupings of time. So like the sun rises, we get up because the sun is up, and then we work until we're a little bit tired. So either hunting or you gather things in the community, and then you go to sleep for as long as you can until you wake up again because the baby's crying or there's an animal attacking you or whatever the case may be. It's just fascinating on how over time different groups of people overall,
Yeah.
because of the Industrial Revolution, maybe it was before that, we kind of changed as a human race what we do, and now we can look at the specifics within each group, each population. Maybe it is race and ethnicity, but maybe it could be geographic locations, depending on what people do.
I think it would be cool to have conversations with students from different cultures about how they approach leisure, and certainly what they do in their spare time, in their free time. Because people do very different things. It is okay. So even here on campus, very different things. I remember a long time ago we talked to students who didn't drink, who didn't party, and like what they did. It's kind of different cultures. And so, okay, so that's cool. I like that. I like that idea. So, relaxation. Huh. Yeah. I like that.
You made that shit up, just said you should also look at the book White Trash 400 Years of Class in America.
White Trash 400 Years of Class in America.
I think it's the 400-year Untold History of Class in America by Nancy Eisenberg.
Yeah, all right, there it is, Nancy Eisenberg. Okay.
We would be sharing Sam's screen, but his computer isn't allowing us to do it. So.
Yeah, I'm not.
But he is actively looking at the book.
Yeah, I see that. Interesting. All right. How white trash became an identity. Yeah, that's actually, Okay. I remember hearing of that book. It's about 10 years old. And, okay. I think that actually would be, you know what? How about that? I'm going to write this down actually right now. A class in my notes, a class on white trash, and try to get people who are not white trash to have a conversation about who and what white trash is and who they are. Yeah, that's very cool.
I think our chat would rather just have our class read these books.
Yeah, that would be okay. That's a cool. All right, there you go, right there. Awesome. That would be a cool class. Yeah, we've done stuff on kind of looking at whites and social class, but we have not gone into really to the white trash world. Now we could have. We always have a couple students in class who really are from areas that are extremely poor and considered to be white trash regions of Pennsylvania. And when I was when I was younger, my sister moved to Kentucky, and where she lived, they didn't have running water. And I remember the people who lived across the street on this lane in which they lived, most of the people lived all around her. They were rich because they had a brick house. I mean, it wasn't her; it was her mother, her parents-in-law. But they weren't rich. It was not by any stretch what would be considered It was a very tiny ranch house that just was made of brick, and that was a big thing. But all around were people who were so poor, man. And they mostly were children, like families who had been, and worse, sharecroppers. And I remember everybody had outhouses. My sister had an outhouse when she moved out of her in-laws' house and got a place. They didn't have running water, and they didn't have plumbing at all. So they had an outhouse, man. And I remember using that outhouse. But I remember these kids and how they didn't have shoes, and I was just blown away. Yeah, it was crazy. Anyway, so that would be a good class. Okay, so cool. Any other ideas? Or just keep thinking of ideas. Not too complex. They have to be things that we can talk to students about, or students can talk about, or they have something to say. And definitely including students from different cultures and so on. So, okay.
Going to the bathroom, I'm going to take my microphone off.
All right, man. And I'll be right here. All right, let me see what else we got. How different is modern African American culture? This is Ahmad. How different is the modern African American culture to the culture from 100 years back, and how African Americans and white American culture have mixed together? That is really, this very much it's a nice way to frame this book right here. So that's okay. I like that. I'm gonna pull that out of there and stick it in my notes right here. Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, very cool. Pop out the chat, move the chat over. I'm learning, by the way. Jeff has me set up with OBS, which is a platform for streaming, so that I can do more streams here from the just from my share. By the way, JCat, white trash is an offensive term. But it's one of those terms that many people it's very offensive. And it is one of the terms that many poor white people have sort of reclaimed, in the way that lots of people reclaim the derogatory terms that others call them. So, you just see this, right? I mean, it's just everywhere. I don't even have to put the derogatory. If you put any derogatory term, anyone that comes to your mind, there's a book out there with that name. And it's a critical analysis of that. All right, Axel. Yeah. Dude, I like that. So Axel says, let somebody like me stand in class, say only hello, and then let the class speculate about that person, then step by step bring up light. Yeah. That's cool. Hey, Axel, so here's actually something really interesting for you. So we have friends who are German. They came here because they were both working on their PhDs, and we met them. The man Mark was in Lori's PhD program, and so we met them. They're back in Germany now, but he was actually born in the United States, but then moved back to Germany when he was about 5. They both speak English very, very well, but not with American accents. Okay, but they're fluent in English, but again, not with U.S. accents. He would sometimes walk into a store here, and in the area, and he would say hi or hello, and people would immediately say, "Where are you from?" all the time. And all he would do is even say hi. And so one day we were trying to teach him how to say hi in a way that would sound like the people from this region, which sound mostly like me and Jeff, right? And you almost couldn't get it. And so what you're saying there about having someone do that reminds me of that. Someone can just say hello, and with that little bit of an accent. Now, it's not true of people who went to, say, like an American school or something, because he didn't go to an American school, and therefore he is in a different. People could see that, but that's pretty cool. The future generations will censor words like our generation does, JCat asks. Like, yeah, I wonder that myself. I think probably.
JCat was talking about the term white trash potentially being viewed as an offensive term. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, like, will the future generations? Because we talked about like gamer words yesterday, you and I, and how
Mm-hmm.
they're on their return. And I think it's interesting to see the pendulum swing as it's currently swinging the other direction of how much are we going to allow of the terms that were previously so
Mm,
offensive you couldn't say them without being canceled.
yeah, yeah. Well, white trash is. I don't think it'll ever rise to that level. I don't. That's one that won't. And I think in part because it's poor white people
Right.
who don't have the kind of power to really to make that claim, make that stake.
JC just also mentioned that maybe white trash should be part of, uh, we could ask people if it should be considered like the N word only allowed to be said by white people. There is a growing population of African Americans. I think Nisha was the first one I ever talked to. Uh, and then I've heard it a lot since she mentioned it to me. But it's black people who don't want to use the N word or don't use it themselves because if she would use it with me, all like as a joke or in whatever context, and it's okay for her to say it, and then hypothetically she runs into me downtown and she hears me say it,
Yeah, yeah,
and she's
yeah.
like, "What the?" But
Yeah,
you almost gave an excuse, so now there's a lot of black people who are explicitly saying, "I'm not saying the word," especially not in front of white people, because then that would give them an excuse to
I
potentially be able to say it. Because I wasn't saying it in an offensive way. I was actually just saying the joke that
yeah,
you told me.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, that's pretty standard. I would for sure the majority of Black Americans do not. You don't even use the word. Don't want to use the word. Don't use it, and don't definitely don't use it except in very unique circumstances. Uh, it's just one of those things that it's like so many. It's like crime. It's like so many things that you see certain things. We broadcast certain things, so we assume that that's kind of how it is for most people, and that's just not. There's that's yeah, it's just not the way. Okay, so Ahmad says another important topic would be how the world has Americanized and the culture formed by the idea of a country, the U.S., has changed the world. Yeah, I could work that. The ways in which the, the ways in which the world has become. Yeah, this would be really interesting for students, I think, in the class.
You
Yeah.
could connect that to Korea to see the similarities and differences on how Korean pop culture is trying to do the same thing that American pop culture did throughout,
Yeah.
since the 40s, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that, okay, the Americanization of things, that's good. There's enough students in class too who could weigh in on that, like how it is back home for them, like what that is. Uh, how technology, Mikhail, has changed how socialization and identity and culture is filmed around it, the good and the bad things. Yeah, I think there's, huh, the way, I think, yeah, ways in which people use and are shaped by technologies. I like that. Yeah. So, JCat, my point was that the culture right now allows anything to be said about a white person, but any other culture. It's not that it's not that any other culture is off limits. It's a certain definitely, JCat. It is much more acceptable to critique white people for sure. That's been true for quite a number of years, and in part though, there haven't been that many words that really sting for white people. The only one is there aren't many. White trash, cracker, there are certain things, but most white people don't have any sense of. Well, no one really knows where cracker came from. There are a lot of ideas about that, but the people who are really studying the kind of the history of that term aren't able to settle on it. But it basically references poor white people, but then it really originally, but it references any white person. But most white people don't even have a sense that it's derogatory. And then most people will say, who use it, who are not white, will say, well, it's not entirely derogatory. But yeah, but mostly, so there haven't been a lot of words that you can use. And, and the degree to which you do, when you pick one out like white trash, it's hard to really pin that down as offensive, because white people have to be offended by it. And it's only very recently that white people have really stepped up and started saying, wait, hang on a second, man. So certain things are offensive to me. Like when you say X, I feel offended by that. So that's a thing. That's a thing to talk about. Yeah, I like that. I mentioned the BDSM as this in the scene Pulp Fiction as that entered pop culture consciousness at that moment. Yeah. I would say that's really interesting. That scene, really, how that entered pop culture. Yeah. Derogatory. What else would you use for a derogatory word for white people? That's the question, right? We don't have it. There are only two that come up for me: cracker and white trash. And white trash, most white people will say, the vast majority of white people would say, well, I'm not white trash. So that you can't even offend me with that, because if someone called me white trash, I would basically be saying, you clearly don't know what that word means, or you wouldn't be calling me white trash. Now, when I was younger, maybe, but not now, you wouldn't. So then it has no, like, yeah. Peckerhead. Yeah. Hey, Matt, how are you, Matt? So anyway, what we're doing is thinking of, if you just joined, I'm kind of laying out, not the semester, but I have a lot of ideas for the semester, and I'd like to get some ideas from other people who watch the class and are wondering, thinking like, hey, you guys should have a class on this, or have a class on that, or have a conversation about a particular thing. So it's really helpful when we have tomorrow's class is going to be, I think, an interesting conversation. I'm going to have somebody who's in a mixed race relationship have a conversation with someone whose parents are mixed race, and just talk to each other about that. Anyway, that's the current plan. We'll see what happens. But I just, for some reason, haven't done that. In Spanish, you could do we do. What is we? Troy, what is that?
I've only ever heard that once, and it was a guy who was in federal prison, and that's what his, it wasn't his cellie, but his friend who is Spanish, like a part of like a Mexican crime family, that's what they called him, was Wedo.
Derogatory for Spanish for white. Oh, yeah, okay, no, I know that word. Yeah, Wedo.
Yeah. Nazi.
Yeah, that's a word. Yeah.
Kraut. That's specifically for the Germans in World War II, but
if you call somebody who's not white a Nazi, it's like it just doesn't even.
It's not necessarily connected to whiteness, yeah.
It's not connected to whiteness, but it is, because you just wouldn't call somebody a Nazi, man. I mean, it just would be like, what? What is that? Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Huh. All right. Well, yeah, the bigger point was that current society doesn't allow a white person to be offended. I think that I don't think it's not that it doesn't allow for that. I think it's just that white people don't know to be offended is really it. You can be, but white people don't know to be offended. And then white people, that means that if someone says, hey, I'm offended by that, other white people around them don't even know it to say, or when back them up in a way to say like, yeah, that's really is offensive because they themselves don't know to be offended by certain things. So unless it's something like a Nazi, but you wouldn't call a whole group of people Nazis. Like you wouldn't call like white people Nazis in a way that you might with white trash or something. So yeah, I think that's really
Stephen from the UK asked on our Discord, so join our Discord. What about tackling misinformation and how the internet and sadly a lot of media outlets don't fact check properly, which is making the populace less informed and more misinformed? And the question is, what are we aiming or what are we allowing by this design? Plus Facebook, Instagram moving fact checkers. Will misinformation get worse? I don't know if misinformation will get worse on Facebook and Instagram. I don't go on either platform really. I've seen how Twitter X does their community notes. And for the most part, I think it's good. The only person who I see get community notes removed from their post is Elon, which is crazy, but it's his company, I guess. And then K Dog, who worked on our captioning team and was a student last semester, they said similar to that, the class should explore dead internet theory, the concept that asserts that internet users now mostly consist of bot activity and automatically generated content manipulated by the algorithms.
Wait, what is that?
Dead internet theory.
What is that?
Most of the internet is bots. So, like, if you go on Twitter, Elon claimed that there was a huge bot problem before he took over. I don't know if he's checked recently, because it seems as though if you go under any popular content creator, there's some form of bot activity. And they're always saying the same thing. There's bots that will respond to each other. They'll like each other's content. They'll repost each other all the time.
Whoa, man, God. Okay, so listen, first off, definitely misinformation. This would be really an interesting conversation to have because there is so much misinformation. And I like that idea of dead internet theory. I didn't know that this is what people, man, I can't follow it. Things happen so fast. But that's actually that's a cool, that's a really interesting thing. So, we talk about like different cultures, like the oh man, my mind just went blank. Like the Chinese and bro, what's the word? The Chinese government.
The CCP?
No, what's that?
The CCP?
No. Like that they shut down free exchange or whatever. What? God! Oh my God! It's a very simple word. Like, okay. Well, anyway,
authoritarianism.
No.
Communism.
Not misinformation, but censorship.
Oh.
It's the beginning of the semester. My brain isn't working yet.
You censored the word censorship.
So we talk about censorship, right, and how big of a problem that is. But misinformation strikes me as a much bigger problem because the Chinese, even in North Korea, man, they know there's censorship. The Saudis know that there's censorship. Man, they know that. People who live inside of governments where censorship is happening in a really clear big way, they know that. So you're not getting anything past anyone. But this idea of dead internet culture and misinformation and bots and so on, people don't really understand how widespread and extensive that is. That's really maybe much more dangerous, actually. So anyway, Jeff, Jeff was just talking about that, by the way. Einbadics. Yesterday, right? It was 10 years ago.
10 years will be next semester since I took the class. I did the 2-2 program with Penn State. So graduated high school in 2013. Did 2 years, so 2013-14, 14-15. So my first semester up here was fall 2015, which will be 10 years next semester. And then I was a TA, then worked for 1 year part-time, and then 5 years full-time, and then 2 years part-time, and then I'm not sure what the years are, but
Hey, Ahmad, I like your topic. How is it that like Muslim nations not supporting the Kurdish, the Uyghurs? We say Uyghurs, but in Chinese you say Uyghurs. Uh, in China, Western Sahara, they don't support that. Most people don't even know there's any kind of conflict in the Western Sahara, but really focus on Israel and Palestine. Like, how is that and why is that? Okay, that's good.
well,
I've talked about that
we
a
don't want to
little
talk
bit.
about our allies
Yeah,
and the horrible things that our allies are doing across the planet.
yeah, that's kind of, yeah. I would like that would be an interesting conversation. Probably maybe not with students because students don't they're not going to be able to get that.
We should have some Kurds come to class, though.
We had a student last year who was Kurdish, but this particular student didn't really know much. They really were not. Um, yeah, they just didn't see. It requires if we get student volunteers to really kind of talk about some issue. It also requires that they have sometimes, not always, depends on what the issue is, but that they have some kind of general sense of certain issues. Um, H-1B, I Grandpa's place, yeah, discussing the arguments about H-1B visas. I had a whole class on that. Not a whole class, but probably about 40 minutes on H-1Bs, going maybe a couple of different classes back like 5 and 6 years ago. And then I just never talked about that issue again. But yeah. Okay, that's pretty good because students don't really understand that. Yeah, of what that is. Yeah.
There's a thing being talked about in chat where they're saying that if you want to get rid of misinformation, you need to get rid of censorship. And although I generally agree with that, that's not actually how we get around misinformation. Because if you have somebody like an Alex Jones or another conspiracy theorist, now you typed it in chat, but for those listening on our podcast, you can listen to us on podcast version, by the way. If you throw poop up against the wall and 9 pieces stick and 1 falls, everyone's going to remember the one that fell, and no one's going to talk about the 9 pieces of crap on the wall.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, sometimes a broken clock is right once a month.
No, broken clock is right twice a day.
Dude, even if it's broken to the point where it's correct once a month, people will say, since it was correct that once in the past month, then maybe it's not entirely crazy that I say the moon isn't real.
Yeah.
Or whatever the misinformation is.
Well,
so the best way I think of fighting misinformation is not having censorship take care of it, but is having actual information. The problem I see right now is that people live on different planets.
Yeah.
And we have been for the past, like, that I've been alive my whole life.
Well, there are certain things. Okay, but nonetheless, I think what Greenhead Lady is saying has some. It is true that sometimes there are some things that are true and have been true all along. I mean, for sure, there's no question about that. But more often, I think we're in the space right now, especially with all the bots, that there's so much misinformation that just gets slammed at us, man. And that we miss it, and then the worst thing is when people start to have this idea that, well, there is no truth out there because it's all lies. It's not all lies, man. There's a lot of very thoughtful, people are trying to get places with it, the truth, whatever that is. So anyway, that's the biggest. That's a big thing. Yeah. Battle bad speech with good speech. Yeah. It's really just, it's hard though, man. It's hard to, it's so difficult. Yeah. I think about sometimes the things I say in class or that get said in class, and then we get an email or something from people questioning that. And I think, God, how do you even question that, man? The things that everybody is willing to question now. So anyway, that's huge. It's a huge thing. All right, man. Do you think public broadcasting is a good way to prevent broad misinformation? I do. The problem with public broadcasting, do you mean like like PBS kind of stuff? And if that's the case, I think yes, but the biggest thing is just a trust that people who are serious journalists and serious researchers, and I don't know what I mean by serious, but who like really are have kind of put their stake in the ground of ethics and morality and truth, whatever it means, right? And they're pretty serious. I think most of them are trying to get somewhere. The vast majority actually are, and they may miss things along the way, but they're really trying to get somewhere. It's like academics, we're not out. There are enough people watching us along the way to let us know in the academy, hey, you're really way off base on X, Y, or Z. And so there may be certain things that we're off base on, like I am. There have been things along the way over the years that I am, but mostly I stay within the guide rails. Like they keep me, for the most part, honest, or at least honestly trying to get to some level of truth. And so I think that that's true for people who are more professional journalists. I think people get lost. They spin out of control. But man, wait, I had you on the whole time. But so they spin out of control. But mostly people trying to get there, man. It's just when I hear people who are just making these big, huge proclamations that's like, you're not going to believe this, but here is this thing that the whole world has been keeping from you, like it's some remedy for some problem, some health problem. It's like, for the most part, or a new pill that comes out. It's like, this new, one of the big drug companies has got the new pill. It's like, it's going to be the thing that changes everything. It's like mostly things that sound really too good to be true, or sound like that some kind of truth that's never been discovered before. Mostly I'm wary of it almost across the board. So anyway,
we have to take money out of everything, JCap.
God, I don't know. Jeff's on camera. Is that you? Are you Auxiliary Dora?
Auxiliary Dora is the bot.
Oh, that's a bot. But do you control that?
Yeah, so I can do like Lori Cam and then Auxiliary Dora, which was the name of the llama that you had in 2020.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
So that's the bot that responds back. But here's our dad joke for the day.
Okay, so it's going to come up with its own dad joke?
No, I put it in.
A faux pas. Oh man, that's pretty good actually. I like that.
That was pretty good.
All right. Hey, listen, Jeff and I, we're gonna pop off here. We just wanted to hop on to make sure that I understood how to operate this thing and kind of set up the cameras and see where we're at and make it work. And I think it's good. Yeah, we'll definitely have Lori on the stream. That's one of the reasons we set. Lori will be sitting right in that chair right there. Yeah. With a better microphone, we'll be able to have better mics than these two.
I'll have to get you 2 Shuras and 7Bs and put one on your desk there and then put one here on a mic stand. We'll get you into a podcasting world.
Yeah. The audio probably doesn't sound very good. If someone could give us like a quick response, because these are really, really inexpensive microphones that I've got. Very inexpensive microphones. got them for,
We don't have the live
Just-
stream up.
just to use for my phone, but the other my other microphone is in charge. So 6 out of 7 out of 10. Yeah, okay, that's good enough. You can hear us, so that's good enough. All right, listen, Jeff and I are gonna head out to Grandpa. So thanks everyone. We'll be in class tomorrow, and then we'll be back in the office hours on Wednesday, and we'll see what happens. Okay.
See you tomorrow. And again, podcasts, Spotify, Apple, look it up. Sam, say your last 2 words.
Be well. Yeah. No, like, stop streaming, right?
Yeah,
That's the last 2 words. The last 2 words are be well. Right.